We formally welcome Dr. Lal Mohan Sir to this August gathering. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. We are extremely honored to have with us today Dr. Lal Mohan Sir, a towering figure, in fact, a stalwart in the academic world of communication and journalism. His contributions span over 2 decades of impactful service, both in the classroom and the newsroom. Dr. Lal Mohan has served as the former head of the Department of Communication and Journalism at the University of Kerala and also as director of the School of Communication and Information Science. He has held the position of chairman of the Board of Studies in Journalism and continued to serve as a BOS member at prestigious institutions, including the University of Kerala, Kannur University, Sri Narayana University, Mount Evanius College, and St. Joseph College Autonomous. He has been the chief editor of Communication and Media Research and is currently on the editorial board of Communication and Culture Review. With 12 years of academic teaching and 14 years of journalistic experience at Malayalam Manorama, Dr. Lal Mohan brings a rare and valuable balance between theory and practice. He has published over 50 bylines in Manorama and was honored with the K.C. Kulish International Award for feature writing by Rajasthan Patrika in 1999. In addition, he has 21 published research papers, 34 conference presentations, 6 book chapters, and even published literary work to his credit. His areas of academic interest include philosophy of communication and film studies. We are deeply honored to welcome the insightful and influential Dr. Lal Mohan Sir to our event today with deep respect and admiration. I now, once again, invite him to grace the stage and share his invaluable words on the topic experiencing technology or objects as technology questions on revealment. The stage is all yours, sir. Please.
Hi, good morning all. Thank you, ma'am, for your generous introduction. And you have almost collected on how many works that I have published, how many papers, how many conferences, and whatnot. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here. I'm coming to this institution for the first time. And, so glad to be here with all of you and sharing wonderful faces and the infrastructure. This is tremendous infrastructure that you have got. And my own student, the Devika, is working here as a faculty member. That's why how I came to know about the conferences and that's how they have invited me. So thanks a lot for your kind invitation, and it's anyway a proud moment for me as well because I think I was actually honored and the way in which they have actually managed to I mean get resource persons like Shashi Kumar, Ravi, and the rest of the people. I think that's a tremendous job that your faculty members have done. So I will just make my presentation a little bit, maybe a little bit different from the other presentations, obviously, for so many reasons. And the most important thing I would say is whenever we are talking about technology and communication, and the person who comes to talk about you in the area of technology is giving a lecture and not having at least a PPT is again a question that you may be having. Right? So this person has come all the way from Trivandrum to here, and he really does not actually share any PPT with us. So what about the relevance of technology in such a case? So this is the question that you may be having. Right? And I know that, and I have faced this kind of a question in many of the programs that I have attended. Uh, and my area of interest is obviously, as she said, is the philosophy of communication. And the area in which most of the things I'll just try to lecture without using any jargons and without actually making any kind of a theoretical propositions and all other things. So I'll just move on to what experiences and the first part would be just to demystify the title that I have given to the organizers, right? So once the demystification purpose is served, then I will stop lecturing, right? So this is the procedure that I am going to have. So we will take almost all the words that are which I have actually used in the title. So I will just try to demystify each one, right? Then, if the whole process is completed, then the lecture is over, right? So this is the way in which I really love to proceed. And one of the most important thing that I would look at this idea of technology is from the perspective with which we look at technology as a as a part as a part of science, and the next one is obviously the perspective with which we are looking at technology, a perspective of social science. So normally the questions that we usually have in the classrooms have both these concerns together, right? One from the perspective with which we are asking to anything with the background of science, right? So what are the questions that we usually ask with the perspective of science? If you ask with the perspective of science to this idea of technology, then what would be your questions? And if you are asking the same question with the perspective of social science to the theme of technology, how would it look like? Or what are the major differences that we can actually find out with these two perspectives? Right? So generally, this is not a Q&A session, so I'll just elaborate what I actually think about it. So this is nothing but to get a precise kind of an answer if we have a science perspective, right? So the scientific questions or the scientific rigor is often considered as something if we get a precise answer, right? And if you are actually looking for or if you are getting an abstract idea about the theme that we are discussing, then we obviously would say that it actually belongs to this arts, humanities, and social sciences, right? So, what are the questions that we actually generate if we are having a science perspective? And for the journalism students, they would say that this is the type questions that we usually have in order to get a precise answer, right? So, why, what, where, who questions generally have an answer with precision. Right? So, which is that question which we do really expect out of this configuration of scientific rigor? Right? Is there any question that we can actually coin without starting with W's? So, we generally ask questions, and especially the faculty members obviously will have this tendency of asking questions with W's, right? What, where, when. Even in the case of our parents also, they will ask the questions with W's, right? So this actually presupposes an answer with precision. So where were you the last day? Who all were with you? What happened there? Why did you came late last day? Right? So these questions actually presupposes an answer which is specific in a way. A specificity is embedded with the question itself. And these questions, I generally believe that these are the questions of science. Right? So this word technology obviously can have two different types of questions, right? The same word can have different approaches, different design. If we ask a question with technology, right? So the other one from the side of social science obviously is having a question with how, right? How it happened. Would it be possible for any one of us to have a precise kind of an answer or an elaborate answer for this question? How? If you are asking a question with how, then obviously it is said that it actually presupposes an answer with an elaborate kind of answer, right? So I was actually coming from home last day and I got a car. I got a car to come to the campus and I was actually entering into the campus. Then unfortunately this happened, right? How? Right? But the rest of the questions have specific and precise answers, right? So this is the question that we are going to raise with the technology, right? The how question, right? Right. So if I ask you what is the gadget that you have with you now, then what would you tell me? Well, your possible answers. Mobile phone, of course, right? Right. So my question is, what is the gadget that you have with you now, right? And if I ask you the same question with how, not with any number, how many is not the question, right? How is your mobile phone, right? Simply, how is your mobile phone? Then what would you say as an answer to this question? So it actually requires a domain in which there are an ocean of answers, I would say. This is not a specific answer. It does not actually anticipate a particular answer for it. And for each one of you, it varies. Right? But the question, what is the gadget that you are actually having with you now may have more than one at least. The same answer, right? But how obviously varies from each one, right? So if she has this answer, the other one will be having a different kind of an answer, right? So this is the basic and fundamental difference between the questions that we usually ask with science and social science. Right? So this kind of an explanation that I am giving is just to make an awareness about the discipline that we are actually in which discipline that we are actually engaged in these questions, right? And for this English literature students, obviously, let me ask you a question. Again, I am not actually anticipating any answer from your side. I will just ask questions and I will tell the answer. Then, if you have anything to add, then please. So the question, what is the etymology of the word technology? Because you have this conference for the last 2 days, and so what's the etymology of the word technology? So the word technology has actually derived from techne and logos. So this is actually derived from the Greek word techne and logos. What does it mean, techne? Techne Techne obviously refers as skills, the craft that you have acquired, right? The craft. And logos, what about logos? A study of something, right? So if you are inquiring about a particular reason behind something which had happened, then obviously it is logos. From this logos we have logics, right? Logic. Logic means what? Logic means we are inquiring the reason behind why it had happened so, right? So this is the question asking the reason, right? So if there is a reason, then only something would happen, right? So we generally believe that if an effect is there, then obviously a cause is there, right? So this is a causality that we are actually connected with. Right? A causality, idea of causality is with what we are actually connected. Right? So what does it mean when these two words are plugged together, techne and logos? So we are inquiring the reasons, or it's a study about the craft. That's simple. So this is so. I'm actually trying to simplify these things and not using any kind of a jargons, and the framework behind the talk I would actually elaborate just after I conclude the presentation. Right. So this is a study or inquiry that is actually conducted or initiated to know the reasons about the skills that one acquire. Right? So this is the actual world of technology, and don't ever assume that some gadgets or some machines, some other things or devices are involved in it, right? So if you have the habit of actually waving your hands like this, or this again is a skill, right? So a study or the reason why which I am actually waving like this is like a technology in some sense, right? So, so why we are having this kind of a habit to understand technology as something else than art? So if it involves techniques, right? And technology is a noun or adverb or adjective or a verb. What is it? And again, English students, so I have just prepared so that I can actually raise questions like this. So technology is obviously noun, no, right? So then what is the verb of this noun, technology?
Study of the
Yeah, study of technology, maybe. Then what do we generally call it? It's technologize. It's technologize. Then what about technological? So this is an adverb, right? And and if you are actually treating a particular word as a noun in our daily life, and if you are using the word as a verb in our daily life, what are the differences that you actually face? If you are having food, huh? And if you have food, I have food, I am having food, right? So what do you find any difference between this, right? Obviously, some differences, right? So when we use a particular word, the derivation from where it has derived has a particular, a particular cause to derive this. Right? And again, why it has derived from Greek is again another question, right? And we have many more questions like, so in order to actually get a proper understanding about the importance of etymology, we have seen the word descent, right? We have discussed and we have many discussions in our classroom about the word descent, right? But during which period one could see the emergence of this word descent to the peak. If you just go to the thesaurus and just Google it, the period in which this word was widely used and has reached its peak, and then it's slanted down, right? So it was during the period of Alexander in the early age. Then it was during the period of Hitler, right? Right. So this actually requires a fraction of a second to just understand from where this word descent has emerged, right? Like or derived like this. So this technology obviously has this kind of a position in between the verb as well as noun, right? So are we going to study about the noun technology or are we going to study about the verb technology? So verb obviously presupposes that an act is committed, right? An act is done, performed. So technology means some kind of a performance. Obviously, as we generally understand the word technology, we believe that some kind of a performance or the instrument which is having the capacity, the capability of performing something is obviously called as the device of technology. Right? So if you have a mobile phone, then it is the device of technology, not the technology. Right? So if you are watching the television, then you are watching the television as the device of technology, not technology. Then how could it be possible for one to at least understand what exactly this technology is? Right? We know the objects, right? We know the machines, we know the instruments. But what about the essence of technology? Essence of technology. So the essence of technology can be understood only if we understand what technological is. Right? So it's a bit confusing, right? See, the question is not about the technology, right? It's in order to understand the idea of technology, one should go and understand or try to initiate an inquiry like this to the idea of technological, right? What is technological, right? What is technology? So, to which kind of an operation do you really attribute this word technological? So what are the regular exercises in our daily practices that we say that it is technological? What's that? This is technological, right? This is not technological, right? We obviously say, right? In most of our conversation, we say that he's a techie, but he's a techie. What does it mean? She is a techie. So techie means one who has the capacity to perform with, right? So again, in that case, the techie becomes the object of technology, right? Right. So this is a slightly complicated thing because we usually see people who are performing with technology as subjects of technology, right? The subject who performs with technology is what we generally understand as techie. Right? But with this new idea of technology, understanding technology, say that they are the objects, mere objects using technology called as techie. Right? So the understanding itself, whoever performs technology are not the subjects of that particular performance, they are only the objects of performance. Right? Oh, am I making any sense or it's a kind of foolish kind of simple kind of animation? Am I making sense? So you just try to focus. So this is nothing to do, you just think about it. Right? So this is a thinking exercise and nothing else. So the things that we actually generally call as subjects are now being considered as objects. Right? Then who all are the subjects of these techies? What is the subject of this idea of techie? We say that they are not subjects, they are only merely objects. Then what is the subject of this particular performance with technology? Who all are these subjects? The subjects are nothing but the essence of technology, right? The essence of technology means we have to have a notion about the essence of technology, right? So what is the essence of technology is the question of this lecture, right? How can we actually understand this authority of this inquiry related with technology? Right? And in some of the instances, if you are going for cinema, what all things you generally focus? Cinema is a kind of an innovation, right, of the 20th century. One would say so. Right? So, how would you actually define the, the the technology behind this art form cinema? Is it just the technology that actually drives you to go to the cinema or other things, right? So, what are the things that you generally engage once you decide to go for a film? At least you have to find out to which cinema that I'm going, right? So you have to make a selection of the cinema, right? So how you are going to select a cinema? Because there are a lot of movies now. A story, right? So if you know the story, then what is the cinema? So going to the cinema. Yeah, cast is there, then theme was there, then yeah, many things. And is that process involved, or are there any other process that we usually engage? Okay, we have decided the cinema. Now we are going to the cinema. To which cinema theater do you want to go? Whichever you like, right? So what is the criteria of this like? If you are liking a particular theater, if you are actually deciding to go to a particular theater, right? A multiplex theater or a class theater or a B class theater, whatever. Because if you decide that I should watch it through OTT only, and in my mobile phone only, and I'm not going anywhere else. So what are the things that actually drives or restricts you to make these choices? So this is an innovative thing in cinema, right? A technology, as you said, right? But is it with this technology that you are actually making these kinds of choices, or are there anything else? Okay, just believe that we have selected a cinema theater, right? And what about the seats that we choose? The price, the ticket price, right? Yeah, that's also a very big, I mean, a concern, right? As far as students are concerned, right? Anyway, so the seats were the seats we generally choose. If there are seats in between the theater and seats are on the sideways near to the door, right? Which one do you prefer? Boys would generally, I have seen that boys generally would prefer the seats the middle of any row, but girls usually prefer seats on sides. Why? What's the reason for this to happen? This has nothing to do with cinema, but still we are making all these things before going to the cinema. At least we have not started watching cinema. We are in the way into the cinema hall. We are making certain preparations to watch cinema. Right? And cinema has all this technology and other things, and its production, its release, it has been actually screened with a particular technology, right? So what are the preparations? So we are actually choosing a particular seat. At least we believe that as ma'am sitting like this. Yeah. See, in this classroom, how many girls are sitting in between the row, other than the side seats? Very few. Very few. What is the reason? This happens as if we believe that we are not doing it intentionally, right? It happens, so we are not actually worried about it, right? So this kind of a preparation, what really is indulged in this kind of a selection of seats, selection of theaters, right? Parking obviously is a concern, right? For many, those who have cars have this kind of an anxiety, but those who have only two wheelers have a different criteria, right? And those who are actually used to have Uber instead, they have a different kind of an anxiety, right? Whether it would come at right time. So this is a different kind of thing, right? All the things what we are going to do is just to go and watch cinema, nothing more. Okay, right? So we are just and if you are actually making a choice in your home that I'm eager to watch the cinema, and your mother says that I am eager to watch the other movie, and your brother says that no, I don't want to watch this movie, I want to watch this. Then what is the thing that actually drives you to actually make these choices? So who would decide in this kind of a discussion which movie we should go, and who are actually paying the money? Who are actually paying the money to watch the movie? Are you, students who are paying the money to watch the movie, or somebody else? Is this person has any role to make this decision, or he or she would actually grant you permission that whatever cinema you would like to have, then we can go for that particular movie? Is it so? Okay. Right. And uh, what about the queue line systems? we have reached now, right? Uh, Ultimately, we have reached the cinema theater and we are about to take tickets, right? Some have actually purchased tickets online, right? And some of us are not going to purchase online and we are actually in the queue. Are there any separate queues lines for men and women?
No, sir.
He says no and we say yes. So for A class theatre, B class and C class theatres, we have separate lines for men and women. But if you are going to watch a cinema in a multiplex theatre, then you don't find any separate lines for men and women. Why is so? Because we are going to watch the same cinema under the same condition, right? And again, another family is coming. They have online tickets, and you are in the queue. And again, in the queue, you have no separate queues in one person and separate queues in the other session. Right. So, what is the reason you actually find for this kind of a difference?
Sir, maybe our individual preference.
Yeah, individual preference, of course. Individual preference, of course. For individual preferences, what actually inspires you, or what really compels you that you should take only this, I mean, this choice, right?
Sir, it's according to our own wish, whether we would
Yeah,
want to.
I definitely agree to what you are saying, right? It's your wish. But what is behind your wish?
What's the minimum of my
Ah,
web and
yeah, this is the reason, right? So you want to have a privacy when you go to the cinema, right? Yes, you so right. And what about a cinema which is actually certified A?
sir, other
How many of us would be able to go for a movie which is certified as A?
sir,
For some reason, this may not be the reasons that we really believe why it is certified A. There are so many reasons. If there are, an abundant activities like violence, drug abuse, then also it may be certified as A, right? Right. In such a case, how many of us have this courage to be there in the queue to take the tickets? And take another case, if a cinema like Kama Sutra is released, it's certified as A, how many of us have this courage to go and be in the line to purchase the ticket? Right? So once this mediation of online has entered into the scenario, then we have actually got a kind of a provision so that we are protecting our privacy on one side and we are actually entering into the arena we really wish to enter, right? So this kind of a process obviously is present when you are going to the cinema. Well, the cinema has not started yet. We have just entered into the hall, right? And we have purchased the ticket and we have actually had the choice of sitting somewhere in between, right? Okay, fine. Then before the cinema starts, what are the instructions that you see? The cinema has not actually harmed any animals and other things, and you are not supposed to have liquor and like cigarettes. Right?
the by recording the visual
It's strictly prohibited that no one is allowed to take pictures or nobody is allowed to capture, right? So these are the instructions that actually come into our mind, right? So in a movie, if we are watching a movie and in the movie, if the actor or the actress is performing the same thing while watching the cinema in the cinema, right? Right? We are watching a cinema and within the cinema, we are seeing persons who are going to the cinema. Hmm? And if actually they violate the same kind of instructions, what would happen on the screen? Right? So we are actually sitting and watching the movie and we are watching the same kind of instances that are actually happening on the screen, like that we face in our daily life, right? So it's a kind of a replica, right? A kind of a replica. But there are some kind of variations and reflections on from the side of the hero or heroine are a little bit different. But it may not be the same as that we really experience, right? But we try to relate these experiences of ours with the actor or the actress, right? So are they the subjects or objects? We have discussed, right? We have discussed that they are not the. See, you are watching the cinema, right? You are watching the cinema, and those who are inside the cinema are the objects of the cinema, right? So which is the hero or heroine, no matter, they are subjects, right? So sorry, they are the objects of this technology, right? So the hero and heroine, who are the objects of technology, and you are watching hero and heroine sitting as subjects. Now the organizers are actually thinking why we have actually invited this kind of a person to here, right? So we could have actually sat and leisurely here and would have actually listened to a talk and we just vanished. Right? But you just think about what are the things that usually happen in our life, right? So the objects of technology and we the subject of technology use the technology as if we are the objects and thus objects are the subject, right? Hmm. So this is a simple equation, right? If you are watching a movie, then we actually believe that they are the subjects who are actually engaging as the leaders of this particular art form, cinema, right? The scriptwriter, obviously, the director, the photographer, the cinematographer, whoever. So all those who are actually present in this art form are supposed to be the objects of that particular technology, and we are the persons on the other side uh, watching these activities, these performances as subjects. Right. So this kind of a correlation between the subject of and objects in engaging the same phenomenon, right? Right. Same phenomenon is happening because they are also watching cinema and you are also watching cinema, right? You are not being controlled as you think, right? You think that you are not actually being controlled by anybody else because you have come to the cinema theater with your own wish. You have selected the movies, you have purchased the tickets, and you are now sitting in the seats where you really wishes. You wish to see sit in the chair, and you are there, right? And what about the actor or the actress who are actually sitting in the cinema, who are watching the cinema? Probably got their seats, right? Probably got their seats. So, do you have any control over them whether they should sit at the side row or in between? Not really. You don't have the control. So, you are saying that the subject is not having any control over the objects of technology, right? Right? So the objects of technology have this kind of a capacity to perform their own with their own will, and they can make use of the freedom which you don't really have, right? Huh? Because even if you really want to sit in between, then you are not sitting in between because of so many other reasons, right? So the subjects of technology have this kind of a restriction or limitation to choose or to exercise their freedom, whereas in the case of objects in technology have the freedom to exercise their freedom huh, as they wish. No. So I'll repeat, right? So the objects of this technology, we don't have a control over them, right? Do we have? No, we don't have any control over them, and they can actually perform the ways in which they like. right? Because they are actually performing according to the script which is written, right? There is already a script, right? So this script is obviously the program, right? So it's like a programming schedule, right? It's a particular program. Huh? We have an assemblage of programs according to which the objects are performing on one side, right? And we are on the other side. We are not being restricted, or we are not having enough freedom as they have, right? But we have some kind of condition by which we are restricting ourselves to choose the seeds at least, right? So the subjects of this technology have a limitation or a restriction to a certain extent. Whereas in the case of this objects, right, who are performing according to the programming, a particular program, in our case it is script, right? They really don't have any restriction other than the programming, right? Hmm? Yeah. So in that case, the objects are being restricted, not restricted, and the subjects are restricted, right? So now we will come back to the condition in which you are having a mobile phone. Hmm? So if you have a mobile phone, are you the subject or object? The same question. Mobile phone is the object that you physically see, right? But I am asking about yourself, right? You are also? You have a mobile phone, right? So you are the subject, you think so, right? So you can perform anything with the mobile phone. You can perform. So if the mobile phone has a kind of a content which is programmed in a particular way, is it possible for you to violate this thing? Not legally, even if you are trying it illegally, is it possible for you to, if a particular program is set like this, then is it possible for you to violate these principles? No, not really. Right? So again, this issue comes to our daily life that once we are using the gadgets, then we are becoming not the subjects, but we are becoming the objects associated with technology, right? So once we discuss about technology, it is not simply to discuss about the objects which are physically present, but yourself is also involved as a part in this engagement as objects, not as subjects, right? So if you are an object, going to the earlier scenario in which the objects have got all the freedom, huh? But the freedom only according to the program, right? A particular program, right? So you are being actually controlled, right? So I am actually coming to the mode in which this AI is getting operated, right? So if you are using artificial intelligence, for example, right, the mechanism involved in this is this kind of an interchange of subject and object, right? When we were having this COVID situation some 4 years back, then one of the news channels in Malayalam started started telecasting Trishur Puram, right? Trishur Puram. In actual sense, there was no Trishur Puram as such, right? But they actually programmed a different kind of a Trishur Puram in a virtual reality mode so that we could see the elephants coming into the temple, right? And they have so many performances, rituals, and other things, as if we think or we experience it really happened, right? So, do you have any one of us have a kind of a control over this program? No. But we really know that this was not in actual sense, right? This is something which is artificially being programmed, right? So if it is artificially programmed, then do you have any control on it? Right? No, not really, right? We have limited control, right? So we are also a part of technology now, right? Hope you are getting it. No? Right. So only if you are not a part of this process, huh, then only you will have the freedom. Right? If you are a student of this classroom, then you have limited freedom. But somebody who is actually standing outside, who is not a student of this institution, will have more choices, right? Even if this boring session can be, I mean, that he or she can actually leave the room because nobody is going to ask. He or she can actually, this is going to happen, right? So this can actually give a little bit more freedom. If you are not participating in the event as an object, right? So only the subjects who are actually engaging as subjects in the real sense have this capacity to exercise their freedom, right? So if you are using a mobile phone, then my argument is that you are not the subject of this, technology, but you are mere objects of technology without knowing the essence of technology. But once you get to know about the essence of technology, then you will become the subject of technology. Right? Hope it's clear now, right? So this is the process that how can we actually learn to be or to become the subjects of technology instead, in fact, occupying the position of objects. So we are trying to make sense about ourselves as subjects who are engaging the phenomenon called technology as objects. Subjects, right? So what is the meaning of subjects? What is the etymology of the word subject and objects? Again, English is the language. So subject, which actually says that something which is ejected inside, right? Subject, which is ejected inside. Objects are things which are outwardly ejected, right? So this is the word from the etymology of the word subject and object. So with this sense or understanding about the subject and object, then try to redefine our role in engaging the technology, right? You try to redefine or try to review what all things you have actually performed with this gadget, mobile phone, right? Now that we have started seeing the cinema, right? And the cinema is over and you are actually coming out, right? Then are you carrying the content of the cinema with you or you are actually keeping it away? I'm not really interested in the cinema now that I'm going home, right? So what all things I've seen is seen, no, nothing more, right? Or are you carrying this content with you? So a little bit, you are actually carrying the content with you a little bit, right? So if you are following a particular or if you are actually performing with a particular gadget, you are carrying something, the content with you, right? Am I true? Though we believe that I have kept this phone away, right? I don't have anything to do with this because I am only using 1 hour. I'm using mobile phone only for 1 hour, right? So I am not at all interested in this and I am not actually engaged as a heavy user, right? But is it okay if you really believe that the content is not actually carried with you? Not really. So what are the contents that you really carry when you are using a mobile phone? Is it the content that you actually visibly see in this gadget or anything else? So there was an experiment, some 15 years back, that people were actually taught how to use their fingers after giving the mobile phones to them. Right? So this kind of a movement with your fingers was quite easy when you are actually using a mobile phone. This was not the case earlier. If you have this typewriters, if you have this keyboard with you, the performance was like this, right? Hmm? Now the performance is like this, right? So the act that we had performed earlier was horizontal, right? Now the act is like this, right? We really don't need all the fingers, right? At least one, right? One from each hand would do. Right? And what about the screen of the mobile phone? Huh? It looks as if it is vertical, but you would try to turn it so that it would become horizontal, right? Right. So what is the shape of a newspaper? Newspaper again is a product of technology, right? We have actually argued like this, right? So what's the shape of a newspaper? Is it horizontal or is it vertical? It's vertical, right? It's vertical. What about a magazine? It's vertical. What about television? This is what happens to us, right? This is horizontal, right? So once the text has transformed its content into visuals, right? What have changed is about the size of or the shape of the gadget, right? So the content, we are speaking about the content, right? And the content actually seems to be the same in both in newspaper as well as in television, right? And what about the photographs that you usually see? Are they vertical or are they horizontal? Mostly. Horizontal, mostly because visuals, right? What about the architect of this conference room? Is it vertical or is it square or is it horizontal? Not horizontal, it's vertical. Okay. What about the door? Is it horizontal or vertical? Why can't it be horizontal? Why this door is actually getting open like this inside? Why can't you actually push it outside? Some architects are actually built in. If you are actually entering into a SRTC or in a public institution, normally the doors are not like this. Huh? Right. These things invite you to come. Come, please come. Right. So this has a notion which could be understood only if you actually meet and I mean, talk with a carpenter. So both the experiences are different. Right. So the objects who are actually performing in the process of technology, who were actually believed to be as subjects, in disguise of subjects, right? We disguise ourselves as subjects, though we are not. Right? We are only merely objects of this technology, right? And this technology is actually being built in certain forms, right? Certain structures, right? So we are actually reading the same content in a newspaper in a broadsheet, I mean in the vertical model, and we just switch over into the television with a horizontal structure. And what about we actually listening to something in a mobile phone? Would you just turn it like this to change the shape into horizontal? No, why? What's the purpose of changing it? Then why are you changing it? Only when the visuals comes, you just try to turn it like this, right? Why? Why can't you actually see it like this, like as it is? In the vertical mode itself. Largest view. Even if it is a profile, a thumbnail, only you are there, right? Then also you actually turn it, right? Or you keep it like this vertical. You just watch, see, the close-up shots of any art form like a photography or a cinema, if they are taking the close-ups, then usually they keep the camera so that in the horizontal mode it looks more effective. Right? So what I'm arguing is that we have a limited freedom to exercise because the visuals, once it is visual, then automatically we will change it into horizontal mode, right? So we don't have a control over the content, right? Because the content decides the way in which the form has to be or supposed to be, right? So the content is actually deciding the ways in which we are actually attending the content, right? How we should attend, how we should actually reflect ourselves using the content, right? And in most of the cases, when we are actually watching cinema in some OTT platforms, right? Do you really watch it with your family or you watch it in your mobile phone? You watch it with your family, right? Mostly you watch it with. So there are certain occasions in which you are not watching it with your family, right? Obviously, the corollary statement, right? Mostly you watch with family means there are occasions in certain occasions in which you are actually not watching it with your family. The corollary statement is like that, right? Obviously, it happens, so right. That's one excuse, right? Family may not be able to watch, and right, it's okay, right? But if you are watching with the family and if you are not watching with the family, the content reciprocation would be different. Is it agreeable or not? Agreeable. Yeah. So why it happens? Is it because we are present or is it because the technology is present? We are present all the time. Even with our family also we are present, and if we are watching alone, then also we are there, right? We are watching same content again, right? But this happens in between, right? The same content is there, the same audience, right? And in case of if you are watching it alone, then you are present in both the cases. When you are watching it alone, you are there. If you are watching it with your family, then also you are present. But the content reflections are different in both cases, right? So what does it mean? See, when I was actually coming to this room, there is only one door to this room, right? Normally, one more door is expected on that side, right? Normally. So was it purposefully done? I was actually having some doubts about this because is it purposefully done or not? Because the students obviously would get a chance to go out of this room only to one room, right? Right. And in your classrooms, you will be having two doors, right? No. Then it actually gives a kind of an impression, right? Right? Something else is actually working behind it, right? Normally, they would make, in case of architectures who are actually building these things, obviously would look at and give more care to those aspects. If it is not purposefully done, then I think something else is actually behind this. Right? Maybe. Right? Yeah, that's the. See, if you go to Techno Park, if you go to Techno Park, and if you are entering into any company, then obviously you can see only one door. So I'm not going to the details of that segment, but just to be alert on these things that the form or the structure actually has a significant role to play in this area of technology, right? And again, in the case you are using a mobile phone, right? And you are actually covering the mobile phone with another, right? Another cover, right? And in front of the screen, you are having another cover, right? Screen guard, right? Then what are the things that you really expect the durability of this particular gadget would be a little bit more, right? It won't get damaged so easily, right? So you can use it for a period of some 3 years or 4 years at least, right? So are you not really bothered about the quality of the visuals that you watch if the screen guard is present in between? See, if you are going to the cinema hall, if a screen guard is actually kept before the wall of the screen, would it be okay with you, or you really wish to have without the screen guard? Why don't you actually have anything else in between the medium and this viewer? See, we are using these things, right? So it has the same chance of getting broken, right? As in the case of mobile phones. Then, would you ever use a screen guard for this thing? No. Even if the screen guard is available, would you opt this one? Yeah. So the options that we do have in using a particular medium or particular gadget is very limited. Because the gadget is the decisive thing that actually rule the way in which you are watching something or you are exposed to a particular technology, right? So if you are using a laptop, if you are using a laptop, right? Why it is called laptop? You are supposed to keep this in right, on the lap, right? How many of us would use this laptop computer actually having this on our lap? Then why you are calling this laptop? Yeah, it got evolved to laptop, right? And from desk to lab, right? And what about the idea of desk and what about the meaning of lab? You can carry. So it actually presupposes somebody who is behind are nothing but human beings, right? Right. So this involvement of human beings, or in a way to be humane in some sense, is what actually ruled during the period or the emergence of these computers, and we call it as desktop and we call it as. And what about mobile phones? Mobile phones cannot actually travel alone, right? Somebody should carry it, right? So is it mobile phone or mobile humans? See, see here, if you are coining a particular word, maybe a kind of a stupid argument, you may say, but these are the things that are actually in the debates recently. Because why we are actually naming a particular gadget like this, right? Calculator, calculator, for example, calculator actually calculates only if you are entering something onto it, right? It cannot actually calculate something alone, right? So, what is the real meaning of calculation? Is it about the equations that we are saying it as calculations? No. You have some planning. So, this is from planning and the result that you actually coin the word calculation. And you are actually calling something as calculator, right? A device is actually called as calculator. Television. What is the meaning of tele? From a distance, right? From a distance, you are watching something. Tele, you are watching the distance and you are watching something. Television, right? Then what about the word radio? You cannot actually say anything about radio, right? You cannot actually find any, any particular meaning to this word radio. What about the word phone? Phonic, phonic, phoneme, right? Right. It has something to do with sound, right? That is how it comes as telephone, right? And telephone was actually called as land phone, right? Why? It was telephone, nothing else, but we called it as land phones because we connected with our purposes, right? So we became to actually translate it into the form of our daily use, right? So only if you are experiencing something, then only one would be able to rename or one would be able to understand the exact device, right? See, if you are watching the star in the morning, in the morning, you watch the star and call it as Eastern Star. Hmm. And in the evening, you are watching the same star. You call it as Western Star. You believe as if you are not moving, right? You are actually standstill, you believe so, and you say that the star is getting changed its place, so I call it in the morning and it's morning star, and evening it's evening star, right? So the experiences are related to the persons who are actually having an exposure to or who are actually having an involvement with it, right? So if you are using a particular gadget, for example, it is relating that who all really have this kind of an exposure to this instrument or this gadget actually call it in his own or her own way, right? Hmm? What I'm saying is that a particular gadget or a device cannot be actually called with a single name, right? So the names that we actually carry with mobile phones are not actually unique, right? Somebody else would use another word for it, as in the case of land phone, right? So the argument is that we are actually the people who are actually engaged in the business of technology as merely objects without knowing the essence of technology. So, what are the mechanisms by which we can actually understand the essence of this technology, right? So, the essence can be understood only if we have a particular unique kind of an experience with it, right? So, you are tired now, right? You're tired, right? So, I'll just try to conclude because see. We will never experience our relationship to the essence of technology so long as we merely represent and pursue technological, right? So technology won't give you a kind of an understanding about the technology, but to be technological is the way in which you could actually easily understand what technology is, right? So it's a kind of a confusing word, and I think uh, we can actually stop now, right? So I'm quite sure that there won't be any questions, right? Right. Hopefully. The difference between, if you are specifically taking a particular subject to discuss, then it is quite easy that you know everything quite before what I say. So if you do not actually know what I'm going to say, and if you are not at all actually happy huh, in listening to what you haven't actually heard before, then it makes really a different kind of a sense, right? Because you are quite comfortable with those subjects which you have already learned, right? Then it will be smooth, right? It will function smoothly, right? But I am actually talking about not a particular instrument, but how we people are actually associated with this idea of technology. Right? So unless and until we just try to understand or demystify our role in this performances, then it is very difficult to deal with technology. Otherwise, we would say that now this AI is coming, now this VR is coming, this is machine learning and other things, right? But how it is actually being problematized, or how it is being dealt, or how it is being actually produced, invented, has certain other significant reasons, right? In the case of Trishulpuram also, see, I was not actually giving you this example as a just of giving a regional example, but this happened in many cases, right? In the case of this COVID mapping, right? Once the people were actually found affected with COVID, then we had this planning of charting the route maps of, right? How it has been done, right? How it was actually done. So we were actually mapping so that we register with our phone number, right? So that the phone, wherever the phone goes, then we have actually getting the route map of the deceased person, right? So this is the way in which we are actually planning things, right? So there is a film in which the only shots that are actually taken are the shots from CCTV. Right? So if you keep a CCTV at your gate, and in almost all the places, if you have a CCTV, then you can actually make some rough cuts of the visuals that the CCTV have has actually captured. Then you can actually edit and you can actually make a sequence, right? So this is how the technology works. So this is not about naming a particular gadgets or actually saying the advantages or disadvantages of a particular thing and how to actually avail these services. So I just actually look at this technology in a different perspective in which how we are actually experiencing this idea of technology. Right? So this is all, and thank you.
Sir, can I ask a question? Okay, so you talked about how we don't have much control as even though we see ourselves as subjects, there is this sort of restraints that we have around us, and this is pretty much happening unconsciously. So, do you think that unconscious restraint has taken a toll on our mental health?
That's a good question. See, if you don't have a control over the technology on which you are actually having a daily use, even in the case of mobile phones, right? So the mobile phone, whatever be the content that you are actually having within it, right? Whether this be a soothing kind of a content, right? And somebody would prescribe you that if you have this kind of a nervousness, and you can watch this talk show or anything like this, or you can actually follow this blogger, for example. Okay? But once you are following this blog, huh, then as I said, you are following a particular form, right? You are following the content as well as you are following the form, right? So following a particular form would make you to change into a different person, right? So this is not actually anticipated, or we cannot actually make a kind of a clear-cut idea that this is the way how we would actually decide, right? So even if you are getting a soothing from the content, it is difficult to say that it would be that helping in the case of the content, I mean form, right? Because simultaneously you are actually exposed to the content and form. If the content is soothing, it's okay and fine, but it may not be the same and similar with the case of the form, right? So if you are accessing a particular form, it's a different thing. Right? See, for example, if you use different dress, different colors, right? There are different things, right? What is the purpose of having this dress is the same, right? With all of us. But we used to wear different types of dresses, right? We use different types of clothes. Right? This different types of clothes themselves would actually render certain other meanings. So it's not about the content alone that we are speaking, and most of the discourses that we actually deal with technology, the issue is about the content. We actually boast that we are speaking about the content, but they are not the content as such, right? Again, in the case as we discussed in the case of cinema, it's somewhat different, right? We cannot actually say that this is the same. So content gives a different kind of meaning, and form obviously has this capacity to render a different meaning.
Good afternoon, sir. So my question is that how can you give us advice on how young writers tap into transmedia opportunities while respecting cultural authenticity?
Thank you. So, see, if you are actually consuming a particular device, a particular content in a mobile phone or in any application, then you have a kind of an assumption about your history, and you actually presuppose an experience. Right? If you are going to a cinema, then you presuppose that this is the experience that I would have if I watch the cinema. Right? It is not after watching the cinema that you are actually making this impression about the content. Right? Before going to the cinema itself, you have an impression that with which you are actually going to the cinema. Right? So the motive of actually consuming a content itself is the impression that you are actually making much before consuming it. Right? So you, as if in the case of alcohol, you know what would happen after consuming alcohol, but still, if you consume alcohol, you would have the same result, right? But you know the result, you can actually anticipate, or it's a kind of an apprehension in some cases, right? rather than anticipation, I would use the word apprehension. Right? So, in many cases, in the case of, people getting exposed to nudity, for example, in this, in the case of the new devices, right? Right. So, the general way in which we actually complain about the youngsters, it's like this. Now, this person is always with this mobile phone. That's why this happened, right? So they are actually anticipating about the content of the mobile phone. Maybe this is not the reason. This may not be the sole reason for this happening, right? No, it may have actually happened because of so many other reasons as well, right? See, if you are, and there is another instance in which people say that if you are giving a mobile phone to an under teen uh, boy or girl, then you are going to ruin this girl or this boy, right? So it's not about the technology that they are speaking, really, right? It's about the character that they are actually speaking. It's about the experience that this student or this girl or this boy would have. They anticipate certain things, right? Right. So the apprehension is not about the gadget or about the technology, but the apprehension really is about the person, right? But we misjudge or misunderstand that it is about the device. Right? It's not about the device alone, but it's about the persona that we are actually speaking about. Right? So, if in the case, as she pointed out, in the case of the things that we usually consume, which actually disintegrate, as she said, the cultural heritage of ours, right? Huh? Uh, I would say that if you really have this courage to engage with the content, hmm, then it won't happen. Right? If you have the courage to engage the content, right? But what instead we are doing is we are not actually engaging with the content, right? We are actually engaging with the device, right? So this is how the parents say that if you are using mobile phone, this is obviously his result would be like this because he is using mobile phone. But what all things he or she uses with this mobile phone, what are the contents they actually consume with this mobile phone is a different question, right? How many of us have this kind of a facility to at least understand what all things they actually consume with this mobile phone? And again, in the case, as she said, the cultural aspects of the sacred culture of this thing, right? So, in such a case, see, we actually presume that this is the tradition that we have, right? But how many of us have this tradition as a Christian? Right? To whose tradition that we are actually speaking all these things, right? As she said, culture, whose culture? Whose culture? Who all actually avail this particular unique kind of a culture? So the culture itself actually gives you a kind of an understanding that it should be different, right? It should be different. And in the case of a person who is consuming a mobile phone for the travel purposes, right? And if he or she is actually watching a travel blog, and within this purview of this travel log, there would be some kind of contents which may come as new, right? Some ways in some areas. There may be areas in which you can actually have some contents with some kind of a unity, right? Right. And you actually call this as a kind of a thing which actually kills almost all your sacred culture and other things, right? But why you are actually looking at this particular content is a different thing, right? Your objective is a different thing, right? But in between the content, there are chances of this kind of appearances, this kind of things coming in between, right? Which we cannot actually control or we cannot actually restrict, right? And again, very recently with these gadgets, there are studies in which they study about the pornography or the soft porn and other things. Right? And whether you are getting addicted to it or not is not the addiction towards the content, right? This is the addiction towards the form generally. Right? This is not the addiction to see. If you are addicted to the mobile phone, this is the issue, right? This is not the addiction to the content within this, right? Huh? Is it a proper answer for your question? Right. She's really tired. She's actually having kind of disturbance. I can go now.
Sir, and Hemant Chandrasekharan. So, uh, according to you, what is your how can educators encourage critical thinking how can educators encourage critical thinking in technology's role in literature rather than just mere adoption?
Thank you. Hemant, right?
Yes.
Hemant, see, critical thinking is a particular area in which you actually raise questions generally. Simply, we can actually understand that what critical thinking says is to ask questions to anything that comes before us, right? That comes before us. So we are actually raising questions on technology in this case. So if you ask a question, how would it actually come to our daily life? Whether it would result in any good things or whether this is going to be a kind of a damage in our life. I mean, in my life. So this is the question that you actually raise or you understand as the critical question, right? So I would say that this is not a purest form of critical question, right? So instead of going to the good and bad things, there are something which you can actually focus on, like the process which is actually involved in between, right? See, if a newborn baby is born, then why this baby is calling her mother as mom? What's the reason for this communicative action? If you raise the question that why this kid is calling without knowing this language, because we have this culture, we have this tradition of calling mother as amma. This is simply the movement. We see the communicative action. This is ah, ah. This infant boy or girl is not having any teeth, right? Achen, achen. So how see you think about the practice that you are having. Achen, achen, ah, ah. So if you just close the mouth and open the mouth with the sound, whatever be the sound, ah. This is right? But in order to pronounce this accent, she is laughing because she is actually thinking about it for the first time, as it seems to be. What I'm saying is that the simplest or the basic formats which we are actually living a life, which is the most important thing that we are attend. Right? See, other things would actually follow these practices. If you are not looking at precisely at this the daily functions or daily experiences of yours, then it will be very difficult for you to understand what is happening to you. These are the simplest forms, right? And there are many more things which we actually do as simple forms. If I ask why you are doing this, how you are doing this, how you are calling, how this infant boy is calling her mother as Amma, after 3 months or 4 months, and you are surprised because she is fond of me more than father. So this is the reason that we feel only because we are not actually engaging the practice or the experience that we do have. This is a simple practice or experience. But unless and until we diagnose it or unless and until we exercise what really is performed, then it is very hard to understand the reason for it, right? Logos. We may not be able to understand the reason. So this is why the world is after or running after the experiences more, right? The world has already omitted most of the theoretical propositions that it used to. In literature also, I'm not quite sure whether you are, I mean, fond of theories only. Practices are more important, experiences are more important, right, than the theory. The world as a whole is thinking or running or chasing after what experience they are getting, right? And this is what we call as phenomenon, right? And tracing out this phenomenon, tracing out this experience is called phenomenology. This is what I am trying to actually exercise in this class, right? And this idea is not a simple thing, right? This is a little bit confusing, I know that. But at least you should, though it is boring, I would say that you should at least get a chance to know what this kind of an act is, right? Phenomenology, right? To study about the practices, to study about the experiences, right? And your perspective, whether you are subject or object in any case, in any of your actions or in any of your experiences, whether you are the subject. And this was actually being implemented in the case of surgery for the first time, right? Medical treatments, right? Even if you are suffering from fever, the doctor prescribes different medicines for you. Why? Because all of us are having the same disease. Then why the doctor is preferring, I mean, suggesting that you should take it twice daily and the other one thrice daily? Why? The weight matters. The weight matters. Though the disease is same, though the illness is same, though the medicine is the same, the frequency with which we are having the tablets are different. Why? And even if it seems to be the same kind of a disease in the case of fever, different types of fevers are there, right? Then how can it be cured simply by dolo alone? Right? In the case of a doctor diagnosing a disease, it is not the capacity of the doctor alone. If the doctor asks you certain questions, right? Was it core? Was it? Whether you have I mean, whether you wear a coat or a helmet when you are actually riding a bike yesterday. Huh? So, was it anything special that happened to you yesterday? Right? So, you would say that you are not actually using any medical jargons. You are not saying that I had 94 degrees Celsius. You are not saying it. Instead, you would say that I was having or feeling like a temperature which is quite high. I have sensed it like that, right? And if you have an issue with your stomach, then what the doctor would simply ask you, how many times you have gone to the washroom, right? This is the question, right? If it crosses a certain limit, then the procedure is different, right? So it is not based on the illness, it is based on your experience. Your experience are the criteria for your diagnosis. So this phenomenology was firstly introduced in the case of medical treatment, right? It was used in the area of nursing for the first time, right? And probably you might have heard this name Husserl. Husserl was the person who actually introduced this, right? Then later on, Heidegger was the person who actually continued this process, right? Martin Heidegger, right? And hope the literature students and faculty members would better know about Nietzsche. Huh? You know it better than me, right? Nietzsche. Right? And who wrote the phenomenology of spirit? Right? So there are wonderful discussions in the area of experiences, and even better than a scholar or an academic in the area of this mangroves, right? There is, you know, mangroves, hundred. So we actually stand for the preservation of this environment and other things. We are against pollution, all of us, right? No doubt about it. So in order to preserve this mangroves, the first revelation was actually from the side of the farmer, right? It was not from the academics that we got this think that if you preserve like this would render more result, right? It was not from the side of the academics that they got this opportunity, right? So for this purpose, they simply depend on this act of experience, right? What happens if you are watching a performance like the F4 performance? Why you are actually performing as if you are actually affected by this performance at times, right? You feel like as if you are a hysteria patient at times, right? What happens if you are hugging? What happens if you are touching? What happens if you are smelling? Right? If you are traveling in a bus and if a migrant laborer is entering into this bus, then you realize by smell and you actually consider this person as somebody who is not equal to you, right? Only because you smell differently, right? It is nothing because they are using mustard oil instead of coconut oil. This is the smell. And this is a simple thing which you can actually diagnose only with your experience, right? And you are actually making these apprehensions just having this smell, right? Oh, somebody has entered. Oh, this person has to be, I mean, taken out of this carriage, right? So this is the feeling that we are having after just, I mean, smelling like this, right? So if you just inquire what is the reason for this, it is not because it is simply because you are using mustard oil, right? This is as I said in the case of this fever or in the case of this door, right? But we don't have or we didn't have this kind of a culture to look at our own practices and our own experiences. Rather, we should actually go to something and other things so that it is easy for us to get a finite result. See, in the case if you are, so am I crossing the limits or shall I conclude? Okay. See, if you are going to, so this is the last one. See, if you are going to a funeral function, you know that the dead person is not going to come back anything. We are rational beings, right? We are quite rational. Then why you are crying? You know that this person is not going to come back. She is dead or he is dead. Right? Then what makes you to cry like this? Even if you rationalize this kind of an event like this and you say that this person is not going to, you know it, right? Then what really makes you cry?
The thought that they are no more.
Huh?
The thought that they are no more.
They are no more, but you know that. Even if you cry or not, it's not going to change, right? It is not going to make any impact on the actual instance, but still you cry. Right? So you have certain experiences, right? Huh? Out of these experiences, you are actually emoting to the situation, right? Which has nothing to do with rational things, right? Like theories, right? It actually depends on your experience, right? We actually learn who and what, not as linguistic terms, right? If you touch, you will understand what who is. If you touch what, then you will understand what is, right? This is the experience that actually comes out as language, right? Language cannot actually survive without any experience, right? If you say a word without a meaning, if you say a word without a meaning, of which you haven't actually understood or you are connected with any image, a particular word with which you haven't connected with any image, is it possible for you to say any word on which you don't have any imagination, any particular image? Oh, if I say oh, you have a meaning. If I say oh, if I say ah, so the words cannot actually produce meanings alone, right? It is with the experiences that they actually find a meaning. misuse. So the basic understanding about technology also is about the experience that we actually acquire as objects of technology, not as the substance. Thank you. Honestly, I know that it was a little bit boring, but it is easy though, so that I can get closest if I say something else. I better know that I have been attending conferences, and most of the faculty members also are nervous like this. Lot of things you see, right? So it's quite boring, right? But at times you have to actually inculcate this kind of a habit to listen to those things which seems to be simple. So I just want how many of us you would be able to actually narrate the same thing that I have spoken just now. You just try, you just make an exercise of your own, then find. And the rest of the things, if you have a specific answers, it is easy to. But those things that we have discussed just now, you just think about it and try to actually recollect all those things and try to communicate with your, colleague or your classmates. Then you would understand what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those words of wisdom. I now invite Joe Joseph Joel from the Department of English to share a word of gratitude.
Thank you, Ram Mohan sir, for your engaging session and valuable insights. Your words were truly motivating.
Your attention, please. We request all participants to proceed to canteen for lunch. The paper presentation session will resume at 1:30 p.m. After the lunch break, participants are requested to move to their designated venues. Please note that the language lab is situated on the fifth floor. Thank you.